It's the 24th Annual Kansas African American Museum Tribute to Trailblazers Hall of Fame, a celebration for the untold stories that continue to inspire Kansas and the world. This year, the Kansas African American Museum will showcase African Americans from Kansas who are the heroes, thinkers, creators, and visionaries who have made significant contributions to our society and have built a strong foundation for generations to come. It is with great pleasure that we honor Dr. Timothy Jones, musician and associate concertmaster for the Wichita Symphony; Langston Hughes, poet laureate and novelist of the Harlem Renaissance era; Lakesha Bates, a leader and technological pioneer in space aviation and exploration; and Dr. DeAngela Wallace, a global visionary in government and philanthropy. Our MC for tonight's showcase, the incomparable Felicia Rolfe.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the 24th Annual Trailblazers Hall of Fame. I'm Felicia Rolfe, your host for this year's amazing celebration. And we have an exciting roster of inductees this year, and we celebrate their many accomplishments locally, nationally, and globally. For more than 2 decades, TKAAM has honored pioneers who helped shape the American experience. This year's theme, Tell the Story, Past, Present, and Future, speaks to how every challenge, setback, and triumph becomes a vital chapter in our shared narrative. With each obstacle faced, the plot thickens, fueling the perseverance, vision, and commitment that turns opportunities into legacy. Now, these stories of resilience, written by those who embrace the future with open arms, resulting in blazing a trail of untold stories, it's a delight to start our program from here, the Kansas African American Museum, located in the beautiful Wichita, Kansas. The museum, home to African American legends such as Dr. John Brooks Slarter, electrical engineer and college president, who served as the first African American director of the National Science Foundation; Verl Switzer, first-round pick, and the 1954 draft for the Green Bay Packers with roots in Nicodemus and Manhattan, Kansas; and Rosie Hughes, former Kansas African American Museum board member and a community photographer in the 1940s through the 1960s. And that's just to name a few. So we continue our long-standing tradition of showcasing Kansans who have made great contributions to American society and are building a legacy of success for others to follow. This year, we tell the stories of extraordinary individuals whose achievements resonate across time and fields. Our Trailblazers have been writing chapters in fields such as space exploration, government and philanthropy, and arts and activism. This year's recipient of the Doris Kerr Larkins Rising Star Award orchestrates brilliance through his work at Wichita State University and the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. So let's get started with the song that sets the stage for the incredible stories that we are about to hear. Roy Moy III presents Tell the Story.
Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. It's a Kansas story of African American glory. Gotta share how people paved the way, made history and changed the game. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. A special class of pioneers, doing real good throughout the years. Dr. Timothy Jones with the violin, educator in the symphony playing, concert master, soloist, passionate about bringing music to the kids. Then we go to Langston, last name Hughes, a legendary writer with something to prove. Poet, playwright, activist, made a difference in the way that we live. Leader of the Harlem Renaissance, you see, his words mean everything. So we take this time to give them that shine, knowing each one of them is one of a kind. Trailblazing just for you and me, gotta keep them in our memory. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. It's a Kansas story of African American glory. Gotta share how people paved the way, made history and changed the game. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. NASA got a leader in Lakesha Bates. Flight systems, yeah, they're gonna be great. Mentoring the next generation in STEM, opening the doors for future women. Now we on a foundation, president and CEO. Dr. DeAngela Burns, Wallace on the go. Award-winning leader, service at her core. Lifting up community and more. So we take this time to give them that shine, knowing each one of them is one of a kind. Trailblazing just for you and me. Gotta keep them in our memory. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. It's a Kansas story of African American glory. Gotta share how people paved the way, made history and changed the game. Gotta tell the story. 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 Gotta tell the story.
We would like to thank Robert Brogdon Automotive as our presenting sponsor for the evening.
Yes, Roy. No, that's an original by Wichita's own Roy Moy III. I remember that name. He is doing big things these days. All right, now that Roy set the stage for tonight, we now invite Denise Sherman, the Executive Director of TKAAM, to share a few words on the museum.
Our journey. TKAAM has a robust story that has been evolving for over 100 years. The original location of Calvary Baptist Church has served as the cornerstone of Wichita's early Black community. It was built in 1917 when the congregation's leaders worked nights and weekends to finish the church. TKAAM invites you to tell your story and explore the stories that bridge the past, present, and future. Stop by the mural display at our future location at 201 North Main to explore the narratives shared by our community.
Thank you, Denise. Well, just as Calvary Baptist Church became a beacon in telling the story of our rich history, our honorees inspire us to draw strength from every chapter, overcoming obstacles, pushing forward, and succeeding. So tonight, we celebrate our collective story of resilience and unity and how we come together to write a brighter future. And there is no better way than to join us as we celebrate our 2024 honorees. We now invite Ebony Clemens to introduce this year's Doris Kerr Larkins Rising Star Award.
Greetings. I am Ebony S. Clemens, immediate past president of our Kansas African American Museum and the current board chair for the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. I am thrilled to have the privilege to present the Doris Kerr Larkins Rising Star Award to a young man who has pioneered his way and elevated classical music through education, performance, and artistic and community engagement. Please join me in congratulating Associate Concert Master, Dr. Timothy Jones.
Wichita State University celebrates Dr. Timothy Jones as the Doris Kerr Larkins Rising Star.
The first time I actually met him was way back. It had to be something like 18 or 20 years ago. I was thinking about this when he was a student. And he was playing in the orchestra as a student then. And the Wichita State University has this way of working with Wichita Symphony where students will play, if they're good enough, to play in a professional orchestra. And then they move on and do something else. So I remember when he was there, that was before I was the music director. I was here as a guest conductor. And he and I started talking after the rehearsal, and he just had some very thoughtful things to say about the rehearsal and about my technique and about what he was hearing on the stage in this part versus a different part of the stage. And I thought that I was just kind of amazed at his thoughtfulness and how much he could perceive and how much he could really engage in a thoughtful conversation as a student. And then I didn't see him for years. And then he came back these many years later, already having his doctorate and ready to go to the next level. And he won the audition for Associate Concertmaster, which is an extremely high position within the orchestra. And he won from behind the screen, so we didn't even know who he was. and then he came and said, "Oh, it's Tim Jones but Dr. Tim Jones now, and he's going to be playing in this very coveted position within the Wichita Symphony."
So I did grow up in a very musical family. My mother played the piano for a short time as a kid, but then she insisted that all 5 of her children took piano lessons. I have 4 older siblings, 3 sisters and a brother. And we all started piano lessons basically when we started school. It was a really interesting system. My mother insisted that we study the piano for a year. And at that point, she said, you can choose to stop playing the piano, but you have to do something. You have to choose some activity to do instead of piano. But actually, none of the 5 of us did stop taking piano lessons after that first year. In fact, we all instead chose to add a second instrument. My youngest sister played piano and violin, and she was actually the reason that I started playing the violin. So I owe so much of my musical and personal journey to my sister, Doris.
I think when I started teaching him was long before I knew what I was going to do. I think he was in 2nd grade, but I just remember going through that book 1 in maybe a week. Like, he just caught on like that.
I mean, 18 years ago, he was young and finding his way. I think he was majoring in music and math at the time. So just a brilliant young man. Just kind of that exceptional kid that you knew was going to go places.
I moved to Brazil because of a passion for the Portuguese language, certainly, that I had developed while living in LA. But I also was able to move to Brazil because of a scholarship that I received to earn my doctoral degree in violin performance. And of course, each time that I moved, each city that I lived in, the art that I was making and studying would bring me together with these beautiful, rich, diverse communities.
When he came back after receiving his doctorate in Brazil, there was no opening at the university. And he had, as a part of his undergraduate degree, also gotten an ed degree. So he had a Bachelor of Music Education and a Bachelor of Performance.
When I finished my doctorate in Brazil, I felt that I was ready to go home. The truth is, in terms of career goals, as early as age 11 or 12, I really wanted to be a teacher. I remember very vividly being in middle school and having teachers whom I loved and respected, and already thinking, this is what I should be doing. So really the music part, even though I was already passionate about music, I was already performing at a fairly high level for my age group. And one of the things that really strikes me is how much access students have today to information, even about careers. It's a completely different landscape in terms of knowing what you could study, knowing what jobs you could have. So I ultimately feel that even had I had access to all of this knowledge and information, I still would have chosen music. I still would have chosen education. For me, those things were inescapable.
What's exciting for me about Tim is that here's this world-class musician, and yet he's fully invested in Wichita. I think Tim sees the potential for Wichita State, sees the potential for local students, and you don't have to be teaching in New York or Los Angeles to find those prodigies, and the investment is there, and that's what I really admire about Tim.
We have about 80 individuals in the orchestra. The Wichita Symphony Orchestra is a fully professional orchestra. That's one thing that is very important for people to know. We're not what is termed a community orchestra. We are a professional orchestra that plays for the community, that serves the community in the best way that we can. We have about 80 individuals in the orchestra. The orchestra is comprised of 4 families, so we have percussion, brass, woodwinds, and strings. And within the string sections, we have first violin, second violin, viola, cello, and bass. So there are 5 subsections within that. And each section within the families each have principal players. And those principals are the leader of those individual sections.
Historically, classical music is not a field that was particularly inclusive. In terms of performers and composers, for several hundred years, most of the music which was being written for orchestras and instruments like the violin, for them, by them. But it's fantastic music. And I, as a melanated person with a passion for this music, am so thrilled to celebrate the beautiful art that was created.
And actually, a violin concerto has just been written for him that Wichita State University Orchestra is premiering in November. So there are many facets, as a professional classical musician, and he's dinged all the boxes. He's a fabulous chamber musician. He's an incredible soloist. He is a superb teacher.
A trailblazer to me is someone who stands out for all the right reasons. That is, it's just the truth and the genuineness of what they do is what is going to cause other people to want to follow them. And I feel like Tim and other people that I've admired that have had these leadership qualities have almost this quiet leadership. It's this confidence that isn't brazen or that tries to show the world in some flashy way. But it's just there, and you can just kind of feel it emanate from that person. Those are some of the people that I've seen do that. And they're able to be trailblazers just because of the person they are. And I think that's one thing that is so great about Tim, is he's just such a wonderful human being. And we at the Wichita Symphony and the community of Wichita are so very lucky to have Tim Jones as the Associate Concertmaster, a real leader, and a connection to Wichita State University, which is so vital for us too at the Wichita Symphony. And we just appreciate and love his personality and what he brings to the music.
Thank you so much to the Kansas African American Museum. I'm so honored to be receiving the Doris Kerr Larkins Award. I want to thank especially my sister, Dory Thompson, for starting me on the violin, my mother, Rebecca Jones, for always encouraging me, my husband, Jonatas Macias, for being always by my side. I truly believe that Wichita is one of the most incredible, beautiful, artistic communities in our country, and I look forward to continuing to contribute to this community.
We would like to thank Evergy, our honorary sponsor for the evening.
Congratulations, Dr. Jones. You are truly a gem in the narrative of progress. Thank you for all that you do to inspire those around you. All right, next, our Trailblazer is being honored posthumously for his impact in the world through arts, storytelling, and activism. His voice and vision shaped a legacy that transcended poetry, inspired movements, and touched countless lives. His story continues to echo, influencing generations with words that still ignite change today. Here to introduce this writer's story is TKAAM board member Ted Ayers.
Hello, I am Ted Ayers, TKAAM board member and History Trail coordinator. It is my pleasure to introduce the next honoree, Langston Hughes, with a 2024 Trailblazer Award for his success. His groundbreaking poetry, prose, and activism championed African American culture and the beauty of everyday life. Langston Hughes was an American poet, social activist, novelist, playwright, and columnist ranging from the 20s to the 1960s. He was one of the earliest innovators of the literary art form called jazz poetry. Hughes is perhaps best known as a leader of the Harlem Renaissance. As a young boy, Hughes spent time at the Carnegie Library in Lawrence, Kansas, learning about the magic of words. I am truly honored to celebrate the life of Langston Hughes as a 2024 Trailblazer.
I too sing America. I'm the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh. and eat well, and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America.
He holds a special place in my mind about how African Americans think of themselves today, because he was one of the icons of the Harlem Renaissance, which was essentially the new Negro movement. We were moving away from these horrible images that were created of African Americans, and was trying to move the country toward a more dignified image of African Americans. And so we have someone who, as a Kansan, really had national and maybe even international influence on how African Americans saw themselves and what they aspired to be. It's something that everyone should know, that someone from Kansas helped shape how we think of African Americans and African American history and our struggles and our aspirations. We have to be proud of that. We have to be proud of that.
We think of Langston Hughes as a poet. I actually think of Langston Hughes as a social commentator, right? And that's through poetry, novels, everything, right? So not many people know that, really know that he writes short stories, he writes novels, he writes, letters to the editor. He writes these simple, stories, cartoonish things that he does, but have social commentary. So that's what I mean, is that they evoke him, they'll know who Langston Hughes is, and they will know the name, and more than likely they know the Negro Speaks of Rivers, because they've all been, we hope at least, right, been taught that in class. When I think of Hughes, oftentimes, I also think of a line that was taken out of his first autobiography called The Big C, where he talks about coming up. His grandmother lived on Alabama Street, which was just down the street, just down the hill from campus. And so he came up to the top of the hill and looked out over the river, the Kaw River, and looked out over the valley and saw the river and it moving. And he makes a comment about how he wanted to travel to places like the river was taking other people. And I reflect on that many times coming out of the Bailey office here at the university and seeing that same valley and understanding that Hughes, that Hughes walked on this space, that he thought of the river taking him places far beyond Lawrence. And experiencing things. And then, of course, when you think that his first published poem in the major publications was in the Crisis magazine was The Negro Speaks of Rivers. And he talks about these great rivers throughout the world and how they have connections to the black population of the world. But I think in the back of his mind, he always must have had the Kaw River as well, and that memory of that river and where it was going to take him. And as he's traveling to Mexico to see his dad, that he's thinking about all these rivers he's seen and that road, that waterway taking people to different spaces. And that's one of the things that we have here in Lawrence, is that we not only have, the pride in Langston Hughes and the understanding of how he can critique and open things up for us about America and also explain the greatness of America at the same time, but we walk in the steps of Langston Hughes.
For always, he was dreaming of something better. It seemed as if the wind blew dreams into him, dreams of a rich and colorful life, like the pictures in books.
So his writing is just like the poetry of the Civil Rights Movement in so many ways. I mean, you take something like A Dream Deferred, and that poem has become such a symbol of just what it means to be black, period. And, Dr. King's dream doesn't connect to that, but it does connect to that, because the fact that it's a metaphor of dream, but I'm sure dream deferred, and becomes Lorraine Hansberry's title of her play because he's influenced her. And then she is really the first hugely successful playwright, African-American playwright on Broadway. And that was all of those things are connected to him and his feeling about what it means to be black.
We have the Langston Hughes Center here at the University of Kansas, which is a center to study, race in America, not just literature, not just Langston Hughes, but to look at politics, history, literature, culture in America from the African American perspective, very much the way that Langston Hughes did. And because he's not just a poet, he's all of those things wrapped up together. And so I think that there's been a ability of the city to acknowledge. It wasn't surprising when I came to Lawrence 17 years ago that the city wasn't quite where they should have been, though there was efforts to try to get acknowledgement of him, because most places in the country didn't always recognize the African American heritage of their cities. So to see that here in Lawrence wasn't shocking to me.
I've always thought that exposure to this kind of art, exposure to this kind of literature has the effect of lifting culture. And we need it because the culture beats people down, but it's the arts that we need to lift people up. Race remains an issue in this culture in ways that people don't realize. In the 60s and 70s, states and the federal government were running interstates through black communities. When 135 came through Wichita, it went right through the black community. It cut McAdams Park in half. People drive up and down what we call the canal route every day. They have no idea about the history behind it, how it ended up there, why is it still there, and all the lives and all the people that were displaced to make it happen. Hughes, he was trying to articulate what it felt like to be a person subject to that kind of governmental and social power. And there are few people who are as effective at it than Langston Hughes.
Kind of what Trailblazers do is push things forward so that time has to react to them and respond to them. And that's not being ahead of their time. That's making time catch up to them. And what Trailblazers do is they somehow find a way to speak to people, typically emotionally, and then we start to understand the oppression. Even though we're kind of, the oppression's all around us, it's become normality and we don't see the oppression. A Trailblazer comes in, especially an artistic Trailblazer, and they shake you up. They make you feel something that you haven't felt before, or you did feel it a long time ago and you don't feel it anymore. And suddenly you go, well, now it's time to stop. It's time for that to stop. It's time for that to change. It's time for things to move forward. And so in that sense, they're not ahead of their time. They kind of break through time, and kind of bring us with them. That's pretty profound stuff. And that's why he's a Trailblazer.
We would like to thank our legacy sponsor, Spirit Aerosystems.
Ted, thank you so much for presenting one of the most celebrated Kansas storytellers. Next up tonight, Brittany Beck, TKAAM's curator of collections and exhibitions. Now she's going to share the importance of art as a method of storytelling.
Collecting stories. TKAAM pays tribute to the late Dr. Samela S. Lewis, who gifted the museum a portion of her private collection of paintings and sculptures by leading African American artists. This generous gift formed the foundation of the permanent art collection of the Kansas African American Museum. Stories can be inspired through different mediums of art, including art, photos, documents, and artifacts. What stories have not been told? What's your story?
Brittany, thank you so much. Now, our next honoree is a trailblazer in the fields of business and STEM at NASA. Yes, NASA. As she broke barriers in space exploration and innovation, her journey, one of pushing boundaries and expanding horizons, inspiring future generations to reach for the stars and beyond. Let's hear more about this trailblazer from TKAAM board member Carmen Moravec.
Hello, I'm Carmen Moravec, and I'm a project architect with Schaefer Architecture and a TKAAM board member. It is my pleasure to introduce the next honoree, Lakesha Bates, with the 2024 Trailblazer Award for her success in space engineering. Congratulations, Lakesha.
I met her in 1990 when she was a 7th grader at Marshall Middle School. I was her PE teacher, and I kind of recruited her. I said, hey, Bates, I think you would be good in volleyball. She goes, Coach Logan, I have never played volleyball before. I said, it's okay. That's why I'm the coach. I'll teach you. So she goes, I don't know. I said, hey, let's just come out to practice and give it a try. She did, and she came around, and she happened to be one of my better players.
Well, originally I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and I had a very, very humble beginning. So my mom was my biggest influence growing up. She felt like that, she didn't have the opportunity to go to college or even finish high school because she had children at a very young age. And so she pushed us and she didn't know how we were going to get to college, but she begged us. And so I figured that at least through academics or sports or a combination of both, that could afford me a free ride.
She made straight A's when she was in school. I remember her making 1B, and she cried so until I told her if she would just stop crying, I'd go and ask the teachers if they could change that to an A.
Nothing came easy for Keisha. She had to earn everything that she got, and she worked extremely hard to get what she's earned. And for her to go on and get the degrees that she's accomplished and to be working for NASA and supervising engineers and doing the big time things that she's doing is absolutely phenomenal.
When I got to high school, I enrolled in every sport that I could possibly think of. I said, well, by the time my senior year, at least maybe one of them will give me a scholarship.
It was time for volleyball, 8th grade, and we were taking the team picture. We were all in our uniform, our colors are burgundy and royal blue, and everybody was in the gym ready to go. Bates was not there. So a teacher came in, and I said, have you seen Bates? He said, yeah, she's in Mr. Mars' classroom. I walk into the classroom, and Bates has her notebook and her book, and she's doing all these math problems. I said, Bates, what are you doing? She goes, I'm here to do my homework. I got a test tomorrow. I was like, let's go. She goes, but I need to finish this. I said, well, then you can finish it after pictures, but you need to get into the gym so we can take our pictures. But if I would have known what she is now, I might have let her stay in the classroom and do those problems. I saw the potential. I said, she's gonna be somebody. She gonna be somebody. She's gonna make a difference.
As a Kansan, that makes me very, very proud to call this state home, to know that this state is having an impact not only on people's lives within the state, but nationally and internationally. Lakesha is a prime example. Look what's going on in Wichita, what's going on at the universities. Kansas is a major player in aviation and aerospace. And as someone who, again, calls Kansas home, works for a major tourist destination in Kansas, that's important for us to continue to articulate and educate students.
When I graduated, I had offers from Northrop Grumman, I had offers from Los Alamos National Laboratory, pretty much all of the internships that I had worked. But NASA was special because, making a difference across the entire world, and it's just an aha moment when you come into NASA.
I'm Anthony Sanders. I'm the Chief of the Electrical Engineering Division here at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. I manage over 230 federal employees and 9 branches, of which Lakesha Bates is the head of the Integration and Test branch. I met Lakesha around 2008 when I first became a supervisor. Lakesha came to me and asked what was my experience like being a supervisor, and one day she aspired to be a supervisor. Well, my first impression of Lakesha is her smile. She brightens a room when she comes in. She's definitely has a great personality, She's kind, she's determined, and she's a hard worker.
I am the technical authority for the Flight System Integration and Test Branch. At any one given time, I'm responsible for 15 to 20 spacecrafts or observatories like some that you might know, Hubble Space Telescope and James Webb Telescope. And so the overall goal of my branch is to build up the spacecraft to the way it was designed to be built, test it according to requirements that it's supposed to operate according to scientists, and then after you test it, then ship it down to the Kennedy Space Center to be launched.
We are getting ready for a night launch, and it is going to be on point. Family and friends, we are in for a show tonight.
When I think of Lakesha coming from Kansas here to NASA in Greenbelt, Maryland, is that she demonstrates it really doesn't matter where you're from, where you've been, you can reach your goal if you work really hard to achieve it. And she is leading by example, and she's showing an example for young African-American girls and women that this is the goal that they can reach one day.
She continues to strive and to work hard to make a difference within her job in the community.
It's important for the youth to be able to see what's possible, to see what someone has already achieved, and that door is open for them, that there's no limits to what you can achieve if you work hard.
So in sports, there's always a goal to win. There's always a goal to make the championship. And that doesn't happen overnight. And the biggest lesson that I learned is tenacity and consistency and persistence. And that's what you see in the workforce. In engineering, things don't always go right. Those lessons learned, those hard, long hours that I learned to, sweat and just long hours in sports, it translated very well into the workplace, because in engineering, that's what it is. I consider myself a trailblazer. I didn't know that I would ever be a NASA engineer or a NASA leader, but here I am today. And anybody here that want to be here, all you have to do is really apply yourself and show determination, and you can be anything that you possibly can think of. First, I'd like to give an honor to God for giving me the strength and the courage to just achieve. And next, I'd also like to give a big thanks to the Kansas African American Museum for recognizing me for such an honorable award as a Trailblazer. Trailblazer, for me, being nominated and inducted into the African American Museum is huge for me. It's huge for my family, and it's huge for anyone who ever thought that things may not be possible because of their present circumstance or their present situation. I am here to say today that because Kansas is recognizing me as a trailblazer, me and anyone that is listening to this message, you could also be a trailblazer. The only thing you have to do is to apply yourself and just never give up on your dreams and goals, and dream big, because nothing is impossible.
We would like to thank our legacy sponsor, Capital Federal.
Congratulations, Lakesha. So excited for you and your contributions. They are a shining chapter in the story of innovation. We sure appreciate all that you do. Let's hear now about our Kansas history from Chauncey Wilson, and learn more about the Cowrie Shell Leadership Society from TKAAM's board member, Andy McPhee.
African American history is American history. Kansas entered into the Union in 1861 as a free state. Exodusters, abolitionists, homesteaders, freedmen, and humanitarians upheld the belief that every citizen should have the opportunity for a better life. Their early sacrifices, courage, risk-taking, and triumphs served as the foundation for the dreams, accomplishments, and history-making events that are represented by current and past Trailblazers. We invite you to join us to learn more about Kansas African American history, because we are culture.
Hello, I'm Andy McFadden, board member of TKAAM, and I'm proud to support our mission of preserving and sharing the Kansas African American experience. At the heart of our support is the Cowrie Shell Leadership Society, named after the cowrie shell, which holds deep cultural significance. Historically, cowrie shells were symbols of wealth, trade, and leadership in many African societies. Sharing the Kansas African American experience with each generation is our mission. It's our work. We believe that these experiences can help each generation address challenges facing communities and our state. I invite you to join this powerful network of supporters and make a lasting impact with a gift of $1,000 or more annually to ensure that our stories and experiences are passed into future generations. The Kansas African American Museum, we are culture.
We would like to thank Meritrust Credit Union as one of our heritage sponsors for the evening.
Thank you, Chauncey and Andy. Now, our next honoree as a true leader in the story of economic policy, championing growth and opportunity from her pivotal role at the governor's office, inspiring others to join in the journey toward a brighter future. Now, to share more is Shayla Franklin.
Hello, I'm Shayla Franklin, treasurer at the City of Wichita and TKAAM board member. It is my pleasure to introduce the next honoree, Dr. DeAngela Burns Wallace, with the 2024 Trailblazer Award. She has dedicated her career to advancing equitable access to education and public services. Tonight, we honor Dr. Burns Wallace for her groundbreaking work in shaping a more inclusive future through her tireless commitment to both philanthropy and civil service.
So I grew up in the Kansas City area and grew up in a neighborhood of families, children. My grandparents lived, about 5 minutes from us. I grew up in a community where families knew each other, where families supported each other. I was the kid that packed their backpack and wanted the school supplies and cried if we couldn't go to school. And so I was always ready to go to school. I enjoyed just being around people, but even more so the learning. What could we learn? What could we explore?
I've known her since 7th grade. One thing about DeAngela, even in the early years when we first met when we were young, she's always had a commitment to excellence. And I mean that, across the board. And so it's not 100% for her. It's 110, 20% all the time. She would tutor, she would mentor. We served on student government. She definitely was one that would take a bold step forward and be the first and not hesitate at all to volunteer or to help other students.
I landed at Stanford University. I got introduced to international relations and understanding kind of public policy and how do you leverage resources to support an initiative, support a community. I would go on to do a master's at Princeton University in public policy. That actually spurred a career as a diplomat with the State Department, living and working in places like northern and southern China, South Africa, Washington, D.C., on the Hill, and exposed me to so many different issues, resources, opportunities. I worked with Secretary Albright. I worked under Secretary Powell. I worked under and with presidential, commissions.
She's always been committed to excellence and committed to having an impact, quite honestly. And that's been reflected academically. You were mentioning where she went to college with the state and just what she's done in academia.
I got a phone call one day, and it was from the governor's office, and they said, we are putting together boards and commissions that, the governor appoints to. She had just recently been elected. We'd love for you to come down to Topeka and have a conversation. I get an offer to be the Secretary of Administration and the Chief Technology Officer for the state of Kansas. And so many of the roles that were under my purview as the Secretary of Administration were actually very similar to purviews that I had held in the federal government as a diplomat when I was overseas serving in missions.
The first time I had an opportunity to actually meet her, she was working in Topeka, just engaged in community work, civic engagement work, trying to make our communities better. And so I would see her name associated with projects that seemed to be meaningful in any number of communities around the country.
There could be nobody better for my cabinet than DeAngela Burns Wallace. Great problem solver, and she's a terrific manager of people. It was clear that, not only could she be Secretary of Administration, but when we needed a new head of our information technology office, here I had the perfect person already in place and one who was willing to take on such an extraordinary task.
She's always been committed to excellence and committed to having an impact, quite honestly. She not only does it for herself and looks at her accomplishments and is able to look back and see what she's achieved, but along the way, she's also doing it with the heart of helping other people. She's making an impact on what she's doing professionally, but she's also making an even larger impact in the community and just helping those around her, her friends, her family.
She's worked in the governor's office, in the governor's cabinet. So there's a governmental piece to that. She's worked in the higher education space, and so she's got a working knowledge and relationship with higher ed. And then she lives in her community. And so tying those things together in ways that make a difference, whether it's educationally, academically, social economics, environmentally, what are the conditions that need to be created, and what is the holding environment we can create so that people can be successful?
I would eventually find and wind my way back home. But about 8 months in, I got a phone call about an open search that I might want to consider. And that search would land me in this role here at the Kauffman Foundation. The Kauffman Foundation today focuses on creating greater access. How do we play a role in learning and convening so that we are able to change the trajectory for individuals, for families, for communities?
She never forgets about how can I help other people? How are my actions maybe inspiring others? So yes, she's truly an inspiration, and she always has been.
One of the things that I think is really key about her work is that she doesn't describe how you do it. She says these are the problems that we want to solve. She brings together agencies, individuals, government, non-government organizations that are working on issues that are plaguing communities. And then she invites the nonprofit community to innovate and experiment and come up with ideas that they think might help progress be made. And then she helps fund those and comes along and provides support and resources. And so particularly for populations that have been marginalized, whether those are folks of color, whether those are women who didn't have access to workforce, whether or not those are second chance folks that are coming out of incarceration, you name a group, a target population for which the American dream has not yet been materialized. And I think her work touches on that.
I think for me, the perception of Trailblazer as it relates to DeAngela is that, I think of a Trailblazer as one walking their own path and setting their own path forward, but also leaving a path that welcomes and invites others to follow, and it empowers them, it encourages them. She's not only impacting in small ways, but she's impacting in ways that really will last a long time. And it's broad reaching, right? So it's just not one or two things. Her hands are in a lot of things. That's what makes her special as a Trailblazer, is that she juggles many things and she excels at many things. She does well at many things. But at the end of the day, it's not so much what she's doing, but it's how she's doing it and the impression that she's leaving on others once she's done.
So it is a full circle moment to be able to serve in this capacity to those neighborhoods where my church was, my grandparents lived, I grew up, to be able to ensure that the next generation of families, of communities, are able to have that access, that are able to control their economic mobility and make a difference for their kids, for their futures, for this community as a whole.
She's driven by seeing the success in others, seeing the smiles in others, and that just motivates her to want to continue to have an impact, to continue to be an influence and continue to be an inspiration in so many of those areas.
She's there to do the work, she's there to bring communities together, and she's there to make a difference.
It's a way of demonstrating that if you work hard, you can achieve. It's a way of demonstrating if you're humble, you'll excel. And it's all those things that make DeAngela special in this moment as a trailblazer.
Dr. Burns Wallace was a trailblazer long before she met me. Just take a look at her resume. I mean, she's got 3 top-tier schools, foreign service, all sorts of amazing things, where my guess is she was one of the first. And in those roles, she was able to get done things that many before her had tried to get done.
And so don't put limits on yourself. Some of the places and spaces that I have been in, if you had asked me 5 years earlier, I may not even know they existed or even thought that that was something for me or my path. But when you remove those limits, when you dream a little bit bigger, when you are open to opportunities, when you are open to being in new and different environments, people around you see that. They know it. They recognize it. But the most important thing is you do have to be prepared when the opportunity arises. So be prepared, but never stop dreaming.
The Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation celebrates Dr. DeAngela Burns Wallace as the 2024 Trailblazer.
I would like to thank the Kansas African American Museum for this honor. This is truly humbling, rewarding, and it's unexpected. Along our journeys, you never know who is paying attention, and we do the work because it is so important. Thank you to my family, my parents, my brother, my son, as well as friends, colleagues, peers who along the way have been a part of my journey and helped, because I could not do this alone. It is truly an honor.
We would also like to thank Walzer Auto Campus and Genesis of Kansas City, our print sponsor for the evening.
Stories of culture. Culture represents our diverse lifestyles and brings energy that enhances our experiences and interconnectedness. Culture powers our past, present, and future. TKAAM is the leader in providing unique culture experiences that offer a space to explore, reflect, and connect. As we look to the future, our vision is to create greater unity by bridging our shared history through innovative collaborations and provide lifelong learning experiences.
Thank you, Kay. Now, we are excited about the future because our culture is important. Let's now hear some inspiring words from C. Edward Watson, TKAAM Board Chair.
Hello, I'm C. Edward Watson II, and I'm the current president of the Kansas African American Museum Board. I am proud to represent its many dedicated members whose work makes it possible to accomplish its mission. This year, we kicked off our transition to the 201 building with our new mural, Tell the Stories That Have Not Been Told, inspired by Gordon Parks. We hosted our annual Taste of Africa event celebrating our Cowrie Shell Society members. Lastly, we continue to support our regular engagements with the community and other interested parties throughout the year. We look forward to your continued involvement with TKAAM, and we hope that you will enjoy the remainder of the show.
This is the year of storytelling. At TKAAM, we believe in the power of narratives. They can spark conversations that create pathways and connections. Here are some of the storytelling activities offered by the Kansas African American Museum. Through our Senior Wednesday program, we dive into heritage, genealogy, and history, showcasing the rich tapestry of experiences that shape us. We invite you to stop by and view our latest exhibition, Collecting Stories, where we reveal the story behind each artifact, highlighting their roles in understanding history. Kids of all ages have shared their stories through drumming, a vibrant method of storytelling that echoes the voices of our ancestors. This past October, we celebrated Hattie McDaniel Day and held a special event with our partners at Tallgrass Film Association to celebrate her story. With deep gratitude, we thank our sponsors for their vital support of our Tribute to Trailblazers Hall of Fame. You empower us to share these important stories, reminding us that together we can honor and celebrate our collective history.
We would like to thank Robert Brogdon Automotive as our Hall of Fame sponsor for the evening.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Burns Wallace, congratulations to you. Your influence is a treasured part of our collective story. Now, guys, this hour has been nothing short of extraordinary, honoring the African American experience and the inspiring journeys of the 2024 Trailblazers, whose achievements in technological advancement, business leadership, arts, activism, and civic service illuminate our path, truly embodies the values of the Kansas African American Museum. The mission of the Kansas African American Museum endeavors to make the Kansas African American experience resonate with every Kansan and through technology with all persons. And the vision of TKAAM is to be the premier place where the communities come to learn about or even tell the Kansas African American story. And tonight, we sure thank you for joining us.
Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. A special class of pioneers doing real good throughout the years. Dr. Timothy Jones with the violin, educator in the symphony playing, concert master soloist, passionate about bringing music to the kids. Then we go to Langston, last name Hughes, a legendary writer with something to prove. Poet, playwright, activist, made a difference in the way that we live. Leader of the Harlem Renaissance, you see, his words mean everything. So we take this time to give them that shine, knowing each one of them is one of a kind. Trailblazing just for you and me, gotta keep them in our memory. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. It's a Kansas story of African American glory. Gotta share how people paved the way, made history and changed the game. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. NASA got a leader in Lakesha Bates. Flight systems, yeah, they're gonna be great. Mentoring the next generation in STEM, opening the doors for future women. Now we on a foundation president and CEO. Dr. DeAngela Burns Wallace on the go. Award-winning leader, service at her core, lifting up community and more. So we take this time to give them that shine, knowing each one of them is one of a kind. Trailblazing just for you and me, gotta keep them in our memory. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. It's a Kansas story of African American glory. Gotta share how people paved the way, made history and changed the game. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story. Gotta tell the story.